The reason you feel paralyzed by a new, complex skill isn't that you lack talent, it's that you're looking at the whole mountain instead of the first step. Today, we're going to show you the 3-step scientific system to break any skill into pieces you can master fast. We've all been there, right? Staring at some new challenge, learning to code, maybe mastering an instrument, or becoming a great public speaker. And you just feel this wave of overwhelm wash over you. It feels impossible. But that feeling of paralysis, it's a totally universal human experience. It's not a personal failing. It's just a design flaw in our approach. And the good news is, it's completely solvable with a systematic, engineered way of learning. So here's our game plan. We're going to take a 6-part journey to completely rewire how you look at complex skills. We'll diagnose the problem, lay out the solution, break down the engine, get into the science, give you an immediate action plan, and finally, lock in the core philosophy. Let's dive in. First up, the paralysis paradox. Look, to solve any problem, you have to really understand it first. We need to get a clear diagnosis of this invisible wall that stops us in our tracks before we can even think about tearing it down. Seriously, think about it. Why does just the idea of starting something big and new feel so exhausting? Why do we suddenly find ourselves cleaning at our inbox or scrolling through our phones when we know we should be practicing? This isn't about a lack of willpower. It's a predictable biological reaction to a very specific kind of trigger, and we're about to get into the science of what's really going on. So the first part of our diagnosis is something called cognitive overload. Your brain, especially your working memory, is kind of like a computer's RAM. It has a limited capacity, right? It can only handle so much at once. When you look at a huge fuzzy skill like learn Python, you're basically trying to load a program that's way too big for your system. Your brain literally doesn't know where to click first, so it just freezes. This isn't laziness, it's a processing bottleneck. You can't start because the first step is buried under a mountain of complexity. And that cognitive overload leads directly to the second problem. When your brain freezes up, a more ancient, primitive part of your brain, your limbic system, jumps in. It performs what we'll call the limbic veto. It takes one look at this massive, undefined task, calculates the insane amount of mental effort, or activation energy, it would take to even get started, and it yanks the emergency brake. It flat out rejects the command from your conscious mind, and suddenly all you want to do is anything else. That powerful urge to procrastinate? Yep, that's the limbic veto, just doing its job, trying to protect you from what it sees as a threat to your energy. So, let's say we manage to push past that initial resistance. We often fall into another trap, scattered effort. We dabble a little here, a little there. We work on the parts that are kind of easy or fun, but not the ones that are actually critical. This leads to painfully slow progress, which just confirms our brain's initial suspicion that this whole thing is too hard. It eats away at our self-belief. The alternative, and the very heart of this system, is what we call surgical triage. It's about ignoring all the noise, finding the absolute core of the skill, and focusing all your energy right there. This guarantees rapid, visible progress, which builds the momentum and the belief you need to keep pushing forward. Okay, so we've diagnosed the problem. It's a 1-2 punch of cognitive overload and the limbic veto. So now, let's talk about the cure. This is the engineered solution to that feeling of being completely overwhelmed. A simple but incredibly powerful 3-phase framework. And here it is, the 3 pillars of skill decomposition. First, we create the map. That's the competence deconstruction. Second, we find the core lever through 80-20 isolation. And third, we build the engine with the micro-mastery loop. This is the system that outsmarts the limbic veto, bypasses cognitive overload, and puts you squarely on the fast track to competence. It's not magic, it's just a much, much better process. All right, let's pop the hood on this thing. We're going to deconstruct the engine itself, breaking down each of those 3 steps so you can see exactly how it works to accelerate your mastery of, well, anything. Step 1 is all about creating the map. You take that big, scary, abstract skill and you just break it down into all its little pieces. So if you're learning to cook, you don't just write, learn to cook. No, you write knife skills, temperature control, understanding acid and salt, seasoning, plating. You list every single sub-skill you can possibly think of. The crucial move here is that you're taking all that complexity out of your head and putting it onto paper. The monster is no longer hiding in your mind, it's a checklist you can actually analyze and attack. The feeling of relief from this step alone is huge. Now this is maybe the most powerful part of the whole system. Step 2, the 80-20 isolation. You look at your map, your list of 15 or 20 sub-skills, and you apply the Pareto principle. You ask yourself a simple question. Which 2 or 3 of these components will give me 80% of the results I'm looking for? For a new guitarist, it's not learning 100 scales. It's mastering the 4 or 5 basic chords that show up in thousands of songs. You surgically identify that critical 20%, and, this is key, you give yourself permission to temporarily ignore everything else. This is the art of strategic focus. And this brings us to step 3, the engine. The micro-mastery loop is how you get it done. First, to beat that procrastination, you use the 2-minute rule. You just commit to practicing for 120 seconds. Anyone can do that. Second, your practice is super intense and deliberate, focused on one and only one of your 80-20 components. And third, this is the secret sauce, is the correction protocol. When you mess up, and you will, you don't just mindlessly try again, you stop. You perform what's called a correction rewind drill. You analyze what went wrong, you visualize doing it correctly, and only then do you try again. This little cycle of practice, failure, and immediate correction is what builds skill at a crazy speed. So we've covered the what and the how, but to truly believe in a system, you really need to understand the why. So let's dive into the brain science that actually powers this whole method and explore the neurological reasons this system works so incredibly well. Okay, the first reason is something called myelin formation. Think of a neural pathway in your brain as a bare copper wire. Every time you practice a skill the right way, your brain wraps that wire in a fatty insulating sheath called myelin. The more you practice correctly, the thicker the myelin gets, and this insulation makes the signal travel way faster, stronger, and more accurately. The micro-mastery loop, with its intense focus and correction drills, is basically a myelin building machine. It targets the most important pathways, your 80-20 skills, and just wraps them in layer after layer of myelin until they become fast, precise, and eventually totally automatic. Next up, let's go back to that emergency brake, the limbic veto. Remember how it slams on the brakes when the activation energy feels too high? Well, this system is designed to completely hotwire that response. By breaking the skill down and using the 2-minute rule, you lower the perceived cost of starting to almost zero. Honestly, it becomes easier to just do the 2 minutes of practice than it is to argue with yourself about not doing it. You're not trying to climb the whole mountain, you're just taking one tiny little step. This simple psychological trick consistently bypasses procrastination and gets you into the game, which is where the real learning happens. And here's the beautiful part. This system builds its own fuel. Every time you nail a 2-minute practice session or you master one tiny little component, your brain gives you a little hit of dopamine, the reward chemical. These are what we call mastery experiences. They're small, real wins. This constant stream of positive feedback builds your self-efficacy, your deep down belief that you can actually do this. It creates this powerful psychological flywheel. Success breeds confidence, which fuels more effort, which leads to more success. You're no longer fighting for motivation. The system is generating it for you. Okay, we've gone through the diagnosis, the system, and the science. Now it's time to make this real. We're shifting from theory to practice. This is your pragmatic, no-fluff guide on exactly how to implement this system, starting today. Here is your 3-step protocol. It's non-negotiable. First, pick one skill you want to learn. Grab a pen and paper and deconstruct and map it. Get at least 10 to 15 sub-skills written down. Just dump it all out of your head. Second, look at that list and isolate the 80-20 core. Circle the 2 or 3 things on that list that are the real game changers, the things that will unlock the most progress. And finally, step 3, implement the micro-mastery loop. Pick just one of those circled items and design a simple 2 to 5 minute practice drill for it. That's it. That's your entire plan. And when you actually do that practice block, you have to follow these rules like your progress depends on it, because it does. Always start with the 2-minute rule to just get moving. During your session, focus on one and only one core component. No multitasking. The second you make a mistake, you stop. Don't just power through it. You immediately perform your correction rewind drill. Analyze the mistake, visualize the fix. Only then can you try again. This disciplined process is what separates chaotic, slow practice from accelerated learning. We're at our final section. This isn't just a bunch of clever tactics, it's a fundamental shift in how you think about progress. So let's bring it all together and distill the core philosophy. If you only take one single thing away from our time together, let it be this. Complexity is the enemy of execution. Our brains are not built to handle huge, ambiguous goals. Real progress doesn't come from staring up at the entire mountain. It comes from forgetting the summit even exists and focusing with surgical precision on taking the next most important step. Stop overwhelming yourself with the whole. Start attacking the core.
So let's wrap this up. Skill decomposition solves the problem of overwhelm and initiation paralysis. And why this matters is that it gives you a systematic way to accelerate how your brain learns, guaranteeing rapid, visible progress. The system connects the 80-20 isolation and micromastery loop directly to the science of your brain, accelerating myelin formation and boosting your self-efficacy with every single small win. So here is your final challenge. Pick one skill, map it out, isolate its 80-20 core, do it now. Because productivity isn't about doing more, it's about mastering systems that make focus effortless.